Hey y'all, movie retrospective time. We're doing some more cheesy 80s Frank Henenlotter goodness.
Yeah.
Talking about Basket Case.
Yeah. This is the same dude that did Frankenhooker, which I was amazed.
Frankenhooker and Brain Damage.
Yeah. I was amazed by
And Bad Biology, although I haven't seen that one. That was like a more recent one.
I haven't seen Brain Damage either, I don't think.
I thought we watched it.
Which one was that?
It's the one with the guy that has the thing like growing out of his spine. Aylmer. That little like he's like a little monster and he like talks and he like makes the guy do something.
I'd have to see it again. I don't think I've seen it.
I was pretty sure maybe you weren't paying any attention. I'm pretty sure that I watched it like fairly recently because I was going to review it.
Well, Frankenhooker was a masterpiece. I loved it. And then I looked at this one again. I'd seen it a couple times before, but I really didn't pay much attention to it. And this one also is a masterpiece.
It is. This is a schlock classic. How can you not love Basket Case? This is just like Frankenhooker. Even though this is obviously a much more amateurish movie, this is one of his first, this is really his first feature film. I kind of felt like, I mean, he made like a lot of like shorts and other kind of stuff like earlier than this, but you know, this is 9-10 years before Frankenhooker. So that one was just kind of like Citizen Kane, probably, like, you know, from a production standpoint, like compared to this one.
You can call it schlock if you want to. To me, this is a very deep and sophisticated family drama.
You know what? It actually kind of is.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of kind of touching, like, pathos type of, you know what I mean? Which is like a weird thing to say. And when I say schlock, I don't mean that in an insulting way at all. Yeah. I'm just saying that that's how other people would perceive it because this movie legitimately cost $35,000 to make. And they didn't even have it all at once.
Still pretty creepy.
Basically, Frank Henenlotter had $8,000. He knew another guy that was willing to give him $8,000. So they started shooting it with $16,000. And it took them they would shoot stuff until they ran out of money. And then they would like go around to investors and be like, here, this is what we shot so far. We need like some more money. And then they would get like another little trickle of money and like film a few more scenes. So it took them like a year to make it.
This is a great movie. I mean, come on.
I love Basket Case.
Two brothers. They were conjoined at one time, two twins, and they cut them apart. And one twin was a normal guy. He could get dates and live a normal life. The other one was just a piece of a man, a head with fucking arms and a piece of a chest. And he was like thrown away. And you know, and he's like literally thrown away. And he's suffering. You know what I mean? His brother's doing good, and he's just like stuck in the apartment going, ah! And they kept him in a basket and shit. And he's coming up and he's fucking grabbing girls' titties and trying to get laid and stealing their underwear and killing them and shit. And his brother's trying to stop him. It's a great family drama, and it ends just like King Kong. That just fall. And they hit the ground dead. And everybody looking at him, the monster. You know, it's a masterpiece.
This movie is like it's cheap as shit, obviously, but it's a lot of fun. I remember seeing this movie when I was probably like a preteen or a teenager because it came out in 1982. Yeah. When I was 10 years old. I probably saw it maybe a couple years after that, so maybe like in the mid 80s. And me and my younger brother loved this fucking movie.
There's a lot of charming aspects about this movie.
There's just this sleazy
random people acting. Like, you just pick some random people. Can you be in this? And yeah. And they actually pull it off. But you can tell it's random people, a lot of them. And then the special effects, they're not great, but they're pretty good. You know what I mean?
For as cheap as this movie was, yeah, pretty. Yeah. I've seen worse in movies more expensive than this.
It's not supposed to be realism. It's just supposed to be creepy. And it is creepy. It's very creepy. And it's kind of creepy and cartoonish. But that's all it needs. Realism might make it not fun. That's just the way I was thinking it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't... It's practical effects. And some of the shit looked... I had the little puppet.
Yeah, Belial.
Sometimes I thought it was actually a real person looking through a mask with two hands. That's how good the eyes looked sometimes, and then they'd light up. It was just weird, man.
It might. Well, I'm not sure because I'm pretty sure that it was always a puppet, except when you saw it like moving around. Then it was stop motion.
Stop motion, yeah.
And I will say that so Frank Henenlotter, like I said, he's the same guy that made Frankenhooker and shit like that. He grew up in Long Island, New York. And he fucking loved, Grindhouse. He loved all the exploitation movies. He loved, like, going to, like, 42nd Street, like, back in New York City when New York City was just a sleaze pit, and just seeing all these, like, fucked up type of movies. And we've talked about this before, like, in the 70s and early 80s, when New York was real grimy and dangerous, there was some kind of, like, real DIY punk rock kind of aesthetic where it's like people were going out in the streets and just guerrilla filmmaking and making these crazy ass movies, and they were finding an audience. So it's crazy. Like, you could just, like, do whatever and, like, people would be like, cool, and then, like, go fucking see it. And, it's kind of sad that those days are gone, but in a way it's, like, really cool to see somebody. I mean, when he was making this movie, he admitted later, because I saw some interviews with him, and he said, I couldn't afford to make the movie that I wanted to make necessarily. Like, this, the script that I had written for the movie, like, we couldn't afford to do it. But he was kind of like, we were just having a good time. We just wanted to make a movie. We were having fun. We didn't really think anyone was going to see it or would give a shit. So we were just kind of, like, going for broke. The interesting thing is that I think, now from what I could determine from, like, reading stuff about him and, like, watching video essays about it and stuff like that, was that I'm pretty sure that the movie, when some distribution company, like, picked it up, they thought it would play better as a comedy. And so they cut out all the gore, because there is, like, quite a bit of gore in this. So they cut out all the gore and kind of made it more like a comedy, and it didn't really do much of anything. But apparently Joe Bob Briggs, that wonderful man, that national treasure, had seen the movie in its uncut form previously, like when it played in Texas, like at a drive-in or something. And he kind of, like, met with them and said, bro, like, why don't, put the gore back in there? Like, let's do it, like, on the midnight movie circuit. He started, like, kind of plugging it. And at that point, it started playing, like, in theaters all over, like, 42nd Street and stuff, and there started to be, like, lines around the block.
And this is back in the 80s?
This was, like, early 80s. Yeah. Like, 82, right around there. So, from what I could just, like, Joe Bob Briggs was, like, a big part of why this movie became a cult classic, because he really went to bat for it and, like, helped it get...
Well, it's a good story.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
It is.
Yeah, you're like, oh, no, really? Really? They keep upping the fucking game, you know what I mean, about what the hell's this thing's doing, and you got to see it to understand it. It's not really based on dialogue, which I think that is great. It's more about showing and not telling. It's just everything cinema's supposed to be, and it has a lot of, like I said, family drama and a lot of angst in it, and you feel for the monster, but it's still a monster. You feel for the guy who's trying to protect the monster. It's not really their fault. It's the world, and he didn't choose to be born that way. It's kind of like and that was the same thing with King Kong. King Kong was just being what he was. He died, and you know what I mean. The people did it. And that's kind of the moral of this story. Belial was just being what he was. People killed him, basically.
Yeah, it's like he couldn't really help. He didn't ask to be born like that.
No, it's just that's
and,
what he was.
He got, like, treated horribly, like, his whole entire little life.
They literally threw him away, like garbage. And nobody wanted him, except his brother. You know what I mean? And he was a monster. He was just a piece of a body. And he couldn't talk, but he had psychic abilities. That was another thing. Yeah.
Well, he had telepathic abilities with his brother.
Yeah, telepathic link, right.
Yeah. Because that's kind of how the story goes. Like, you start out in the present day, and you're starting out with Dwayne, who is the quote-unquote normal brother. He's played by Kevin Van Hentenryck, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He has very, very poofy hair. Almost mullety, but not quite. Yeah. It's very poofy. And he's just walking down the streets of New York City carrying a basket.
That was 80s hair. He had that Rick Springfield haircut.
Rick Springfield's hair wasn't quite that poofy, but it was kind of like, it was like a poofy level right above, maybe two poofy levels. Yeah. If there's a level of poofiness, like hair poofiness on the scale.
I had that Rick Springfield.
You did, but your hair was not as poofy as Dwayne's hair in this movie.
Like Jesse's girl, man.
Yeah. You did have hair just like that when you were younger.
That was good, yeah.
So yeah, so he's just walking down the street carrying a basket. Fun fact, like I said, they couldn't afford permits or anything. Even in New York City, like now it's super expensive to shoot there. They always shoot in Toronto. But back then you could, but you still had to be sly about it. Yeah. So all the scenes of like people walking down the street were just like done from a moving car. Like they were just like the crew, of which there were like 3 people. The funny thing, I didn't know this about it, but I saw like something, another like breakdown of this movie, and they said, how like the end credits like have all these different names and stuff. They're like, none of those people exist. Actually, they just wanted to make it seem more like a real movie because there was only like 3 or 4 people working on it, like on the crew. So they just made up all these names like to put in the fucking credits, which like to me is, I don't know, that's just really delightful. But yeah, so I like that I don't even know if it's like the first half of the movie. I don't think it's quite as long as half of the movie. But for the first part of the movie, if you've never seen this before, there's like suspense because you don't really know what's in the basket. I mean, that there's probably something alive in there, but they don't show it. So it's just like this guy and he's carrying this fucking basket around.
You know what it looks like. You know what it
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that from the point of view of someone who had never seen it before, like back in 1982.
Yeah, when the first time I saw it, I knew what it was going to be. I just didn't know what it looked like.
What it was going. Well, that's kind of what I meant. I mean, like I said, you knew that there was something alive in there. Because
he can talk to it.
Because at some point, like, he brings back some food. He's like talking to it. He takes it everywhere.
Feeds that bitch raw hot dogs.
And he puts like hot dogs, a whole package of hot dogs. Or the first thing he brings back is like a bunch of hamburgers, like from a place across the street. And he just like throws them in there, and you hear like all that noise like that, which, like I said, sounds like Pookie eating treats. Because we were watching it again last night. I said, oh my God, that sounds just like Pookie when she eats treats out of her little bowl. She just sounds like this little munchy noise. But yeah, so I think it's cool that because, people keep asking him, like, what's in the basket? He doesn't tell anybody. And honestly, he doesn't really tell anybody until he gets drunk with that hooker. I guess she's a hooker, right?
Yeah.
Her name's Casey, and she lives in the building. You know what I mean? I think she might be, other than Belial, I think she might be my favorite character of this movie.
Well, what's funny is that you could tell that's a random woman.
Yeah, she's awesome. I love her.
She had a fantasy. She had the badonkadonk going and everything. And she was sexy, but she couldn't act. But she pulls it off, especially the screaming part.
She's a very good screamer.
Yeah. She became a good actress as she went. You could tell she got more comfortable with it. You didn't notice that?
Well, like I said, it took them a very long time to shoot this, over a year, so that might be why.
Yeah, she's the hooker that lives down the street, or lives across the...
because he's come to New York. I mean, the whole point of the story is that him and Belial have come to New York to take revenge on the doctors that separated them, because they show like a flashback later on. They got separated when they were 12. They were separated against their will, because one thing that happened is that their dad was like really pissed off, not only because he had this conjoined twin that was like monstrous looking and the kid wasn't normal, but also that his wife had died giving birth to them. So that was like another strike against them. So he let them like be that way until they were like 12, and then he decided, fuck this shit, like I'm just gonna have them separated. So he, on the sly, gets all these doctors who you later find out I think are veterinarians, or at least like 1 or 2 of them are. And they come to the house and like in the dining room, like set up a little ersatz like emergency room and separate the twins like against their will, and legitimately like throw Belial into a garbage can and put him out with the garbage to like be taken out. But of course, like Dwayne, that's his brother. They have a telepathic link because they were once attached. So he goes out and rescues him. And then at that point, they're taken in by their aunt, who's actually the only person who's shown them any love. And actually there's like some really kind of weirdly, grotesquely like sweet scenes of her like reading Belial a story. He's like sitting at her lap and she's like reading to him and stuff. But then after the aunt dies, which is when, the start of the movie is, that's when they come to New York and they decide, it's mostly Belial's idea, I think, that we're going to go to New York and we're going to get revenge on the doctors that did this to us, because there's kind of just a whole through line in this movie of, Dwayne, he looks pretty normal, other than he has like a really bad scar on his side, obviously, where Belial was removed. But other than that, he looks completely normal. So he could have a normal life, but the fact that he won't leave Belial behind because he won't betray his brother, you know what I mean? But there's still like a lot of tension between them because he, in a way, like once he gets to New York and he meets, this girl, I can't remember her name is. I think Sharon, and
he can get laid and Belial can't.
And Belial can't because Belial is only just a little flesh blob with like one arm, so I guess he has 2 arms.
He's got 2 arms, like little flipper type.
Yeah.
He just hands on
and he has little claws. He has little claws.
Like hands that have claws on the side of his head.
And he goes,
He can't really talk.
He has like pointy teeth.
Yeah. He's got a demonic face. He looks like a demon. And they have a great scene where his brother's out getting laid and shit. And fucking Belial's fucking looking out the window of the apartment, this shitty apartment they're in. He's just screaming at New York. Because he's frustrated. He's trapped in a fucking demonic body. Which is, you know what I mean? You feel for the dude. You're like,
that's what I mean. It's like, you
didn't do anything to deserve it. It's just, that's how you were born,
That's what I mean
He's tearing
about
the apartment up, and the fucking people are trying, what's in there? And they fucking finally bust into the apartment, and it's just the basket, and they didn't find him. That was some weird shit. Although eventually he starts jumping out and killing people, biting them and shit.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely does like kill all the doctors.
Yeah.
You don't feel too bad about it because the doctors, like I said, they did like separate them, and that was kind of shitty.
Well, it wasn't shitty. They were trying to save him. That's
what the dad said. Yeah. But he was already 12 years old at that point. They were already 12 years old at that point.
The dad was trying to save the normal
normal kid.
So he could have a normal life now. Yeah, but what about the other one? He's basically like, fuck the other one. He's not really going to have a life anyway.
Yeah, he's just a monster.
He's not going to have a life anyway. Sacrifice that. Which I think that's been done.
Oh, I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has.
In conjoined twins. But usually they've done it very early on, I think, a lot of times.
Well, yeah,
I think there were some that in the 70s that they separated, and one of them died, and the one that died was the less formed one. But they were just like, well, gotta happen. And I think they did that because the less formed one had started to develop all kinds of problems that would have ended up killing the other one anyway. Because if one dies, they both die.
That's what I mean. It just seems like a horrible situation all around.
You got to save one of them.
It might come to a point where like you definitely have to. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of just got the point, but I don't know. Like I kind of got the idea from this movie in particular that I don't think Belial was, gonna kill the normal kid. I just think that the dad didn't like that the normal kid could never be normal with Belial attached to him.
Yeah.
And it was and also, like I said, there was that lingering resentment because, his wife had died giving birth to them. So I don't think it was even a health issue, because had it been a health issue, he probably could have gone to like a regular hospital. And had the fact that he did it like on the DL.
Well, I know
in the dining room.
You're looking at it. You're looking at it from a sentimental point of view, but actually, no, they should have been separated so the guy could have had a normal life. What they messed up from is they didn't euthanize Belial. If you're going to do that, you have to euthanize Belial. You can't, know. Which I thought they expected him to die anyway. It didn't look like there was enough of him to live on his own.
Well, they did expect him to die. They said as soon as like we separate them, he'll probably die because he's basically just like a head and arms.
Right.
Like he didn't really seem to have any. Organs.
Yeah.
Even though he could breathe and stuff like that, like on his own, because you could hear him going.
Yeah, in a sane America, there should be certain types of euthanasia for certain situations, and Belial would have been one of the would have been a good candidate
for that. Probably
you can't let somebody live like that in that kind of suffering, and the movie was like that.
It's
not only was his suffering so great, he was killing other people. You can't force someone to live like that. And the dad was kind of right. He was a dick. They portrayed him as a dick. But no, I wouldn't want to live like that. I'd rather have you put me out.
Yeah, but like I said, that's kind of why. I think that's why people are still talking about this movie all these years later, even though it's like super, super cheap. It's in a lot of ways, it's a horror movie, but it's also like it's a horror comedy.
Yeah.
And it was made to be like exploitative, and it was made to be shocking, which it is. But it kind of goes into a lot of issues. And like I said, we're just like talking about it right here. It's like, what would really happen to somebody that was like that? And if this situation really did arise, where Dwayne loved his brother so much that he wasn't willing to like let him die or leave him behind. But at the same time, you know, he's still carrying Belial around everywhere with him in this basket, and he can't like have a normal life. And it's Belial's idea, or so we're led to believe, because Belial can't talk. He can only like telepathically, apparently, like talk through his brother. So it's Belial's idea to go kill all the doctors that were responsible for separating them. But Belial, even though he's sympathetic, because it's like I said, he didn't ask to be born like that, and he, you know, he's frustrated because he can't ever have a normal life because he looks the way he looks, but he's also holding back his brother, one, by holding on to this rage and like revenge fantasy, and he's going to get his brother into trouble, you know, with that too. But he's also not letting his brother go out and like do, like, he can't have a girlfriend, he can't, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, you can only have me. That's the only thing.
If you want to know what it's really like if something like this would have really happened, back in the very early 80s, there was a celebrity type case that was like this. And they actually, I think they showed it on Geraldo or something. They had some conjoined twins that were just fucking amazingly horrifying to look at. The two twins together just looked like a spider. It was like 8 legs.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about, yeah.
And he could walk around like this, and they would talk to each other and stuff. They were both. There was no way they could be separated.
Yeah.
You know, they were just two fused together, but it looked like a spider. And they were both mentally handicapped. So they were happy, you know what I mean? They had the minds of children, really, you know. They would just say nonsense and shit. But they would go down the street, you know, under supervision and shit, and people would scream and run.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was like.
Not real sensitive.
No. Well, they were, man, it was scary to see, you know, shocking. I don't see how a woman could physically give birth to that. It must have come out of a woman through cesarean section. I don't think that a woman could pass that out of her body because it was massive. The baby would have been massive and weird shaped, you know. So they must have just taken it out. I guess it was before amniocentesis was real common. And it lived. But there would have been no way to separate it.
Yeah.
But there was no life that normal humans would ever live. And they, like I said, they mentally didn't develop too well. They would just kind of talk to each other and just make nonsensical jokes and shit. They seemed to be happy, but they didn't seem to be very aware. Like, people would scream and run, and they wouldn't even really notice it.
Whatever.
You know?
Well, they probably got used to it after a while. They maybe didn't even know it was anything to do with them, which, like I said, is probably like the best thing for them. Because...
Yeah, and I don't even know if you could probably find video of them. It's pretty disturbing. I think I remember like who you're talking about. Yeah, they died though.
That was a pretty famous case.
Yeah, I don't think they lived that long. I think they were dead by the time they reached their 30s, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, so I mean, so the thing about it is just like funny that we're getting into this like serious discussion about this when we're talking about this movie. But you know, as cheap as this movie was, as exploitative as this movie was, even though it's essentially, like I said, a horror comedy, it's not quite as funny as Frankenhooker, because it kind of has more of a serious tone to it. And I really like like the whole personality of, because it looked like you said, these were just like New Yorkers. You know, like the guy that runs the Fleabag Hotel, you know, the hookers, the girlfriend. Yeah. It's like none of them are really actors or like really amateurish, but there's still like a charm about it. And you could tell that they were having a really good time, like making this movie. Yeah. And so it's really like this time capsule of like shitty, gross, like 42nd Street, New York, and just all these kind of characters that are like like on the margins of society kind of, and it's like it really has that charm to it that you really can't replicate nowadays.
Yeah, we watched another one recently called Unnameable that fucking just
we're gonna
do it later. It didn't play that well, but this movie was kind of the opposite of that. You could tell the budget wasn't that big.
Yeah.
But it was very, very watchable because it had a really good story. It had a lot of good action. The edit was really good. The story continued along at a certain pace so you could understand what was going on, and it had a good score and good sound effects and good special effects, all within the limitations of its budget. But overall, when you watched it, it was good. It was like watching a movie of a much higher budget when you kind of think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell. I mean, much the way...
You could tell they cared about it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And that really does kind of come through.
Makes a big difference.
In these types of movies. You can tell that, this is really something everybody wanted to make and everybody was really having a good time. Yeah. The woman that played Casey, I think she's like the hooker from across the hall, who, like I said, is probably, other than Belial, is probably like the best character in this because she's just so... I mean, obviously she's not an actress, but she's just such a nice person. Yeah. And that really kind of comes across because she's kind of the only one that cares about Dwayne and looks out for him and stuff like that because he's just this naive. He's never been in New York City before. He's like flashing wads of cash around because he doesn't, he's never had any idea that anyone was gonna steal it and stuff. So it's like she kind of takes him under her wing a little bit and kind of befriends him. And he's like, she's the first person, really the only person that he tells about Belial, even though she doesn't believe it because why would you? It's like, I'm carrying this little chewed gum little person around in a basket, and he occasionally jumps out and kills people in really horrible graphic ways and just stays in the hotel room and screams and stuff. But there's just something so charming about it. I even love the stop motion, which Frank Henenlotter did the stop motion and he had never done it before. He did that one scene where Belial's trashing the hotel rooms, kind of run around the hotel room, and he thought it looked really bad, so he's like, okay, well, we'll just do the whole thing with puppets from now on. But I really, really like the stop motion. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good for never having done stop motion. Probably much better than I could have done, I'm sure. But it was
effective.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. And honestly, the Belial puppet is real. I think it's really good. I think it's really effective. Yeah. It looks really kind of creepy.
Yeah, it kind of looks expensive in a way.
It does, I think.
I mean, when you think of how cheaply this movie was made, you can put it up there with From Beyond or Reanimator. It's as watchable as those two movies.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just super fun. It's like I said, it's just a cheap, this grimy fucking New York guerrilla filmmaking style. Like I said, you can't really do anymore because one, New York doesn't really look like that anymore.
Frankenhooker was a little more fun, I think, because it was funny.
Yeah, this one has funny bits to it.
Yeah, but it's serious.
But with the implications of it are actually kind of serious. Yeah. Because you're what would really happen in this situation? Wow. And like I said, even though Belial is a monster and kills people and stuff, you still feel bad for him because, like you said, he didn't ask to be born like that. And, his brother saved him, which is awesome. But now it's just he will never be able to have a normal life. And that's very frustrating for him. So you can understand where he's coming from also.
It's a conjoined twin horror story.
Yeah. But yeah, so the fact that people are still talking about it all these years later, which is hilarious because Frank Henenlotter said we were just making it for kind of shits and giggles because we wanted to make a movie and we didn't think anybody would see it. We thought maybe it would play 2 weeks in some fucking rundown theater and then everyone would forget about it. And I'm and meanwhile, they made 2 sequels to this. You know that, right? Yeah. They made Basket Case 2 and Basket Case 3, The Progeny. Basket Case 2, I've seen it, but it was a long time ago. I've seen clips of it recently. It's essentially the same story, but kind of more. It looks a lot more polished. Yeah. It's good, but it's not. It doesn't have the charm of the first one because it's not all gritty and gross. And the thing about it is that because I remembered there being sequels when we were watching it last night. I'm don't they both die at the end? Yeah. They both die at the end. So I'm kind of well, how'd they work that out? But they just made it at the end, so it's they didn't quite die. They were just laying there and they're all busted up and everything. Yeah. So, and I think the sequels, from what I've heard, I haven't seen the third one, but I just the sequels get more and more batshit. There's, of course, they have to introduce a female equivalent to Belial. So the 2 little deformed puppets can have sex with each other. Yeah. That's kind of par for the course with these types of movies. So it's just kind of because there is one very disturbing scene in the first one where Belial is trying to maybe succeeding in raping Dwayne's potential girlfriend.
Yeah, she was dead, wasn't she?
Which, yeah, well, that was like really fucked up. I think she was alive for a time, and then he killed her, but then he kept on going.
Yeah, worth seeing. Amazing rack on her.
She did have a very nice rack.
Yeah.
That girl was like that girl was like super funny. Like she's really like not a good actress, but in a way that still makes it like super funny, like watching her. You know what I mean? She works as the receptionist in one of the doctor's offices of the doctors that he's gonna kill. So that's how he meets her.
Movie also kind of reminds me of of that one movie where the guy the abortion who survived the being aborted comes back home. In some ways, it kind of reminded me
Red
of that.
Christmas.
Yeah, it almost for some reason because it was kind of disgusting.
Yeah,
I think that kind of reminded.
That
me.
was a fairly recent movie, Red Christmas. Dee Wallace was in it. That's a pretty fucked up movie if you want to watch that.
Yeah.
Put you in the holiday spirit.
But this is like worst case conjoined twins story is like a horror story. I would think the only thing closest to it in real life would have been the Spider-Man conjoined twins. They were pretty fucking. And then on the other end of the spectrum, that two-headed girl, she's still alive. You ever seen her?
Yeah.
She looked pretty normal.
Yeah.
That's weird, man. She looks like a two-headed girl. It's two girls conjoined.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The torso's a little wider than normal. It's two torsos.
Yeah.
But they can walk around, drive cars and everything. Just one head next to the other. They look exactly like little twins.
Yeah.
And they talk, normal intelligence, you know. Went to high school. They were popular. Man, could you imagine?
The thing that
you
always
never be like, leave me alone. Fuck out of here.
Well, see, that's what I thought. It's like you could never like, can I have some time to myself, please?
No, there's no such thing.
It's like you'd have to like drug the other one. It's like, hey, can you like go to sleep for a while so I can like have some time to myself?
If you date one, you're in a constant threesome.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of like fucked up shit, and it's. I'm sure they get those kind of questions all the time because people are just like naturally curious and like not to be shitty about it, but people are like curious how you navigate like particular like sensitive situations.
And I think one controls one leg and one controls the other. You know what I mean? Like each head controls the other side of the body.
Wow, that'd be fucked up too. I think it's like we're going
walking,
this way. Now we're going
walking
this way.
is like a joint. Thing for them. But,
so they have to like cooperate, or
but evidently they were doing sports and shit. If I remember, I saw a program and it looked like it was running around normally. The mind's incredible. You can adapt. Yeah,
I mean, that's one good thing. That's kind of like inspirational, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this story not so much.
No. No. And there was another story. I don't know if it's true or not, but in the Victorian era, they believed it was true. Some guy who came from a rich family that evidently was rumored to have a face on the back of his head.
Oh, I've heard. Yeah. I've heard that one.
And he thought he could hear what it was saying. It was constantly cursing him. And he grew hair over it so no one else could see it.
I remember that
and it would
story.
curse him for that shit. And the doctors couldn't remove it. It was part of his fucking skull. And it was just a little face. And they said the lips would move and his eyes would move a little bit. It was a face of an infant. He eventually blew his head off. Now, I don't know if it's a true story.
I mean, that's not crazy because I have seen, that happen, like medically, where like there's another kind of face on,
It appeared in stories in the newspapers.
Of
the time, and there was a lot of fake news back then. I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, so it was probably hard to tell at this juncture. But like I said, it's not crazy to think that could have happened because
that you had a conjoined twin.
Yeah, because I've seen similar. And
the brain tissue might be connected, so maybe you could hear the thoughts.
Yeah, that like I said, that's totally not.
Right.
That's not without the bounds of possibility.
Well, when Belial was doing the mental link with him, I thought that's where they got that concept because
it might have been.
That drove him, according to the newspapers and the stories. That it's cursing him drove him crazy.
Because it was just constantly like, you suck.
Yeah.
Back there, kind of.
Jealous
whatever the Victorian equivalent was.
Right.
So maybe that's where he got the idea from.
I think
like that story. Because I had heard that story, so it's a pretty common.
Right.
Whether that was a real guy or not, I can't really remember. Now I have to like look it up on Wikipedia.
Because that's where I thought he got that whole idea.
Yeah, because they describe in the movie, like they said when they were still attached, they didn't have to talk because they could telepathically talk to each other.
Right.
But once they were separated, it only went one way. Like Belial could telepathically communicate with Dwayne, but not the other way around. So they could like kind of see, they kind of like saw each other's dreams and like that kind of shit. So he could sort of see through Belial's eyes because remember when Belial was there like raping and killing his girlfriend, he was having a dream about that, but he was actually realized, and he woke up and he realized that he was seeing what Belial was doing at that point.
But based on my memory of that Victorian case, that's where I think he got the idea for this. But like I said, somebody might want to check into it. Maybe we'll do a show on it or something. I don't know if that actually happened or if that's an apocryphal tale.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. But yeah, seriously, Basket Case, if you're into horror, especially schlocky early 80s horror, you really owe it to yourself to watch this. Like I said, it's super fun. It's super fucked up. It's pretty gory. It's also got some really funny moments in it. Like I said, the acting is not great. It's just, it looks bad because it's was 16 millimeter and then it was blown up. And it's just kind of but there's just some kind of charm. You can tell that everybody was having a good time. They loved exploitation cinema and they were just so happy to be making one that it really makes up for all of the shortcomings and turns them, honestly takes the shortcomings and turns them into assets.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
Yeah. It's a super fun movie. Yeah. And if anybody has seen the sequels, let me know if they're any good. I saw the second one and I remember it being pretty good, but it's been a long time since I've seen it. And I don't think I've ever seen the third one. But I'm kind of curious to watch them now that we've rewatched Basket Case. Basket Case, I think, is on Tubi. It's also on Shudder. So, check it out if you haven't seen it. And like I said, a lot of love to Joe Bob Briggs for kind of making this one into a cult classic that people are still talking about nowadays, because I found all kind of horror channels that reviewed this one, younger guys and everything like that, from just the past couple years. So people are still watching it, talking about it nowadays, which is fucking crazy for a $35,000 movie that they made back in the early 80s. But yeah, so anyway, that'll do it for this movie retrospective, and we will see you guys on the next one. Bye.